They're lying to you about life. After 80, here's what really happens. What if I told you that everyone's been lying to you about what happens when you turn 80? Not on purpose, but they've been painting this picture of golden years filled with nothing but grandchildren's laughter and peaceful sunsets. The truth? Life after 80 is more complicated than that. There are shadows they don't mention in the retirement brochures. Changes that happen so slowly, you don't see them coming until they're already there. And while some of these changes are beautiful, others can knock you sideways if you're not ready for them. I'm not here to scare you or paint a dark picture. I'm here to give you something more valuable than false comfort, the truth. Because when you know what's coming, you can face it with your eyes wide open instead of being blindsided. Today, we're diving into 5 realities that show up after 80 that nobody talks about at family dinners or retirement parties. These aren't the obvious things like needing reading glasses or forgetting where you put your keys. These are the deeper shifts that can change everything about how you see yourself and your place in the world. We'll explore how your circle of friends starts disappearing without warning, why your body becomes less forgiving than it used to be, the uncomfortable truth about needing help after a lifetime of giving it, how society slowly starts treating you like you're invisible, the weight that settles in when you have too much time to think about what you didn't do. But here's what makes this different from other conversations about aging. We're not just talking about problems. We're talking about how to meet these challenges with strength, dignity, and maybe even find some unexpected gifts along the way. So if you're approaching 80, or if someone you love is already there, stick with me. Because understanding these truths isn't about giving up hope. It's about finding a different kind of hope, one that's built on reality instead of wishful thinking. Reality number 1, your circle shrinks when you're not looking. The first shock that hits most people after 80 isn't physical, it's social. One day you wake up and realize the world around you has gotten quieter, not because you can't hear as well, but because there are fewer voices in it. It starts small. Your friend Margaret stops calling every Sunday because she's dealing with her own health issues. Your neighbor Tom moves to a retirement community closer to his daughter. Your brother starts forgetting to return your calls, not because he doesn't care, but because his memory isn't what it used to be. These changes happen one at a time, spread out over months or years. You don't notice at first because life keeps moving. But then comes a day when you reach for the phone to call someone and realize the list of people to call has gotten much shorter. The quiet emptiness. This isn't just about being alone. You can be alone and feel perfectly content. This is about a different kind of loneliness. It's the loneliness of outliving your stories, of having memories that nobody else shares anymore, of watching the people who really knew you, not just your name, but your history, slowly fade away. I think about a woman I knew named Dorothy, 83. She used to host a weekly card game that had been going on for 20 years. Same 4 women, same kitchen table, same arguments about who was cheating at hearts. Over 2 years, it went from 4 women to 3, then 2, then just Dorothy sitting at her kitchen table on Thursday nights, shuffling cards by herself. It's not that I can't find other people to play cards with, she told me. It's that these women knew my jokes. They remembered my stories. With new people, I have to start over. And sometimes I'm just too tired to explain who I am all over again. The ripple effect. When your social circle shrinks, everything else gets affected too. You stop cooking big meals because you're only feeding yourself. You don't buy as many groceries because you don't need as much food. You watch more television because there's less conversation to fill the hours. It's not depression exactly. It's more like everything gets quieter. Your days have fewer interruptions, fewer phone calls, fewer reasons to get dressed up or leave the house. And while some people adapt to this change easily, Others find themselves feeling lost without the rhythm of other people's needs and schedules. Building new bridges. But here's what Dorothy figured out, and what many people in their 80s discover: you can't wait for connection to find you. You have to go looking for it. Dorothy started volunteering at the local library, reading to children once a week. She joined a grief support group, not because she was grieving, but because she understood loss and wanted to help others who were struggling with it. She even started a neighborhood walking group for anyone over 70. I learned that making friends at 80 is different than making friends at 30, she said. You don't have time to wait for deep relationships to develop naturally. You have to be willing to share your real self right away. Most people our age appreciate honesty more than small talk anyway. The key is understanding that connection at this stage of life looks different. It might be shorter conversations, but deeper ones. It might be fewer friends, but more meaningful relationships. It might mean being the one who reaches out first, sends the first letter, makes the first call. Because while your circle may get smaller, it doesn't have to disappear completely, but you have to be willing to work for it in ways you'd never had to before. Reality number 2, your body becomes unforgiving. At 80, your body stops giving you second chances. That might sound dramatic, but anyone who's crossed this threshold knows exactly what I mean. The minor aches that used to go away after a good night's sleep now stick around for weeks. The energy that used to come back after a short rest might take days to return, if it comes back at all. But it's not just about feeling tired or sore. It's about how quickly small problems can become big ones. A simple cold that would have been a 3-day inconvenience at 60 can turn into a month-long ordeal at 80. A minor fall that would have been embarrassing at 70 can be life-changing at 85. The new math of recovery. Your body starts operating on different math. Where you used to bounce back, now you bounce forward. Instead of returning to exactly where you were before an illness or injury, you land in a slightly different place. Maybe your balance isn't quite as steady. Maybe your energy runs out a little sooner. Maybe tasks that were automatic now require conscious thought. I knew a man named Frank, 84, who prided himself on his independence. He lived alone, drove himself everywhere, maintained his own yard. Then he got what he called just a little bug, probably a mild case of food poisoning. Nothing serious, he thought. He'd had worse. But this time was different. The few days in bed turned into a week. The week turned into 2 weeks. By the time he felt well enough to get back to his normal routine, something had shifted. His legs felt unsteady. His confidence was shaken. Tasks that had been routine now felt challenging. It wasn't the sickness that got me, Frank explained. It was how long it took to feel like myself again. And when I finally did feel better, myself wasn't quite the same person as before. The cascade effect. What makes this particularly challenging is how one problem can trigger others. You hurt your back, so you move less. Moving less makes you weaker. Being weaker makes you more likely to fall. Falling makes you scared to move. Being scared to move makes you weaker still. This isn't inevitable, but it's common enough that doctors have a name for it: deconditioning. It's the process by which your body gradually loses its ability to do things, not because of disease, but because of inactivity brought on by caution or fear. The good news is that understanding this pattern means you can interrupt it. Recovery at 80 might take longer, but it's still possible. It just requires patience with yourself and realistic expectations about what getting better looks like. A different kind of strength. The strength you need at 80 isn't the same as the strength you needed at 40. It's not about lifting heavy things or running long distances. It's about adapting to changes without losing your sense of who you are. It's about pacing yourself without giving up. It's about accepting help when you need it without feeling defeated. Frank eventually figured this out. He couldn't maintain his yard the way he used to, so he hired someone to help with the heavy work and focused on the parts he could still manage. He couldn't drive long distances safely anymore, so he arranged for friends to share driving duties for longer trips. He couldn't bounce back from illnesses the way he used to, so he became more careful about prevention and more patient with recovery. "I'm not as strong as I was," he said, "but I'm stronger than I thought I'd be. It's just a different kind of strong." That's the reality at 80. Your body may become less forgiving, but you can become more wise about working with it instead of against it. Reality number 3, you need help, and that's harder than you think. For people who have spent their lives being the helpers, needing help feels like wearing clothes that don't fit. It's uncomfortable, awkward, and you want to take it off as soon as possible. But after 80, this uncomfortable feeling becomes part of daily life, whether you like it or not. It doesn't start with big things. It starts with jar lids that won't budge, light bulbs that are just a little too high to reach safely, grocery bags that feel heavier than they used to. You find yourself doing mental calculations before simple tasks. Is this worth the risk? Should I wait until someone else is here? Can I figure out another way? The pride problem. The hardest part isn't the physical limitation, it's the emotional weight that comes with it. When you've been the one everyone calls for help, when you've been the problem solver, the strong one, the one others depend on, needing assistance feels like losing part of your identity. I remember talking to a woman named Rose, 86, who had raised 5 children largely on her own. She had been a nurse for 40 years, spending her career taking care of others. When her daughter offered to help with grocery shopping, Rose's first response was, "I can handle it myself." But handling it herself meant struggling with heavy bags, getting exhausted from walking through large stores, and sometimes coming home without items she needed because she couldn't reach them or carry them. Her independence was becoming a prison instead of a freedom. The stubbornness trap. Many people fall into what I call the stubbornness trap. They work so hard to maintain their independence that they actually put it at risk. They climb on unstable chairs instead of asking for help reaching something. They drive when their vision isn't clear because they don't want to burden anyone. They skip meals because grocery shopping has become too difficult. This kind of stubbornness doesn't preserve independence. It threatens it. Because when you fall from that unstable chair, when you have an accident because you couldn't see clearly, when you become weak from not eating properly, you lose much more independence than you would have given up by accepting help in the first place. Redefining independence. Rose eventually learned something that many people struggle with. Independence at 80 doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means making smart choices about when to ask for help so you can keep doing the things that matter most to you. She started accepting her daughter's help with grocery shopping, which gave her more energy for cooking the meals she enjoyed making. She got a cleaning service for the heavy housework, which meant she could still maintain her home without exhausting herself. She joined a senior center that provided transportation for medical appointments, which meant she didn't have to give up driving completely, but could save it for trips she actually wanted to make. "I thought independence meant never needing anyone," Rose told me. "Now I know it means being smart about who you need and when you need them. It means asking for help with the little things so you can keep doing the big things that make life worth living." The helper's paradox. There's another side to this that nobody talks about. Many people find that accepting help actually allows them to give help in return. Rose discovered that when she wasn't exhausted from struggling with daily tasks, she had more energy to offer emotional support to friends who were going through difficult times. She could babysit her great-grandchildren because she wasn't worn out from housework. She could volunteer at the hospital because she wasn't spending all her energy on errands. Accepting help didn't make her less useful. It made her able to be useful in the ways that mattered most to her. The truth is, asking for help at 80 isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. It's recognizing that your energy and strength are valuable resources that should be spent on what brings you joy and purpose, not wasted on struggles that someone else could easily handle. Reality number 4. The world starts looking through you One of the most surprising changes that happens after 80 is how differently the world treats you. It's subtle at first, then becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly, you're not just older, you're invisible. The grocery store clerk makes eye contact with the person behind you in line instead of you. The doctor asks your adult child questions about your health as if you're not sitting right there. The waiter at the restaurant speaks louder and slower, assuming you can't understand a normal conversation. People start talking about you as if you're not present, or talking to you as if you're a child. The assumption game society makes assumptions about you based on your age that have nothing to do with your actual abilities. They assume you don't understand technology, so they don't offer you the option to pay with your phone. They assume you can't make decisions, so they wait for a younger family member to confirm your choices. They assume you can't hear, so they raise their voice unnecessarily. They assume you don't have opinions worth hearing, so they don't ask what you think. These assumptions are usually made with good intentions, but they have a crushing effect. When the world treats you like your thoughts don't matter, you start to wonder if maybe they don't. I knew a man named Arthur, 82, who had been a successful architect for 50 years. He was sharp, articulate, and still actively consulting on projects. But when he went to the bank to discuss his investments, the banker kept directing all the questions to Arthur's son, who had simply come along for company. "I designed half the buildings in this town," Arthur told me later. But that young man looked at me and saw someone too old to understand money. He never asked about my experience, my knowledge, or what I wanted. He just saw my gray hair and made up his mind about who I was. The disappearing act. This kind of treatment doesn't just hurt your feelings. It starts to change how you see yourself. When people consistently treat you as if your opinions don't matter, you might start believing they don't. When people act surprised that you understand modern concepts, you might start doubting your own comprehension. When people speak for you instead of to you, you might start speaking less. It's a gradual process, like slowly turning down the volume on your own voice. Many people don't even realize it's happening until they find themselves staying quiet in situations where they once would have spoken up, or agreeing with decisions they don't actually support just to avoid conflict. The visibility choice. But here's what Arthur and others have learned. Being seen is sometimes a choice you have to make actively. You can't wait for the world to notice you. You have to insist on being noticed. Arthur started introducing himself by name and profession when meeting new people, even in casual settings. When the banker ignored him, he interrupted politely but firmly, "Excuse me, but I'm the client here. I'd like to answer that question myself." When people made assumptions about his abilities, he corrected them matter-of-factly. "Actually, I understand technology quite well. I helped design some of the systems you're using." It wasn't about being confrontational. It was about refusing to disappear. Speaking up for yourself. This requires a different kind of courage than you might have needed earlier in life. It's the courage to assert yourself in a world that would prefer you to be quiet and compliant. It's the courage to take up space in conversations where others would rather speak for you. It's the courage to demand respect from people who think your age automatically makes you less capable. Some people worry that speaking up will make them seem difficult or demanding. But the alternative is worse, becoming invisible in your own life. Letting others make decisions about you without your input. Becoming a spectator in situations where you should be a participant. The truth is, most people aren't trying to be disrespectful. They've just been conditioned to see older adults in certain ways. When you speak up clearly and confidently, many people adjust their behavior quickly. They're often embarrassed that they made assumptions and grateful to be corrected. You are not furniture in other people's lives. You are not a problem to be managed or a responsibility to be handled. You are a person with thoughts, feelings, preferences, and valuable perspectives. And sometimes the world needs to be reminded of that. Your job is to do the reminding. Now, let's talk about the final reality that many people face after 80. Reality number 5. Time becomes both friend and enemy. After 80, you have something you've never had before: unlimited time. Your calendar isn't packed with work meetings or children's activities or urgent deadlines. You can sleep in, take long walks, read entire books in one sitting. For many people, this sounds like paradise. But unlimited time comes with an unexpected challenge. What do you do when you have all day, every day, to think about your life? This is when the weight of unfinished business starts to settle in. The conversations you never had, the trips you never took, the chances you never seized, the relationships you never repaired. When you're busy, these thoughts stay in the background. When you have hours to fill each day, they move to the foreground, the regret collection. Everyone carries regrets, but at 80 they feel different, heavier, more permanent, because now you know with certainty that some opportunities are gone forever. You can't call that friend you had an argument with 20 years ago because they passed away last year. You can't take that dream vacation because your health won't allow it now. You can't pursue that hobby you always meant to try because your hands aren't steady enough anymore. It's not that these regrets are bigger or more serious than they were before. It's that they feel final in a way they never did when you still had someday stretching out ahead of you. I knew a woman named Helen, 81, who had always wanted to learn to paint. She had the talent for it. Everyone said so. But she was always too busy with work, too focused on raising her children, too caught up in the daily demands of life. After she retired, she kept to saying she'd start painting soon. But soon became later, and later became never. And now her arthritis made holding a brush difficult. I have all this time now, she told me, but I spend too much of it thinking about what I should have done instead of figuring out what I can still do. The purpose problem. This is especially hard for people who have spent their lives being needed. When you've been essential to other people's daily functioning, as a parent, an employee, a caregiver, a community member, suddenly having no one depend on you feels strange. Liberating at first, maybe, but then empty. The question, what's my purpose now, becomes persistent and uncomfortable. If you're not working, not raising children, not taking care of aging parents, not volunteering for causes, not maintaining a household full of people, then what exactly are you doing with your days? What makes you get up in the morning? What makes you matter? The comparison trap. Social media and retirement magazines don't help with this. They're full of 80-year-olds running marathons, starting new businesses, traveling the world, learning new languages. While these stories are inspiring, they can also make ordinary people feel inadequate. Not everyone at 80 has the health, energy, or resources for grand adventures. Some people are dealing with chronic pain, limited mobility, tight budgets, or other challenges that make such pursuits impossible. This creates a painful comparison, the active, engaged, productive seniors versus everyone else. The message seems to be that if you're not constantly achieving and experiencing new things, you're not aging successfully. But this isn't fair or realistic for most people. Finding meaning in small moments. Helen eventually discovered something important. Purpose at 80 doesn't have to look like purpose at 40. It can be smaller, quieter, more personal. She couldn't paint detailed landscapes anymore, but she could still appreciate art. She started visiting museums, really looking at paintings in a way she never had time for before. She began writing letters to her grandchildren about what she saw in different artworks, sharing her perspective on beauty and creativity. I thought purpose had to be big and visible, she said, but maybe at this stage of life, it's more about being present, really present, paying attention to small things in ways I was too busy to do before. The gift of reflection. While having too much time to think can lead to regret, it can also lead to something valuable, deep reflection. At 80, you have the luxury of seeing your whole life as a complete story. You can identify patterns, understand connections, and make sense of experiences in ways that weren't possible when you were still in the middle of them. This perspective can be profoundly healing. You might finally understand why certain difficult experiences were necessary for your growth. You might recognize how challenges you faced prepared you for later opportunities. You might see how seemingly random events actually created the life you ended up living. Creating new purpose. The key is learning to create purpose rather than waiting for it to find you. This might mean writing down your life lessons for future generations. It might mean becoming a listening ear for neighbors who are going through struggles you've already survived. It might mean finding small ways to make your community a little better. Returning shopping carts, picking up litter, smiling at strangers. Purpose at 80 doesn't have to change the world. It just has to give your days meaning and your presence value. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply show up to family dinners, community events, neighborhood conversations as someone who has lived long enough to offer perspective and wisdom. Time after 80 can be your friend if you learn to use it intentionally, instead of letting it become a weight that pulls you down into regret. You can make it a gift that allows you to savor experiences, deepen relationships, and leave behind something meaningful for the people who will remember you. Final thoughts. If you've made it to 80, or if you're watching someone you love navigate this stage of life, remember this. These 5 realities aren't meant to discourage you. They're meant to prepare you. Because when you know what's coming, you can meet it with strength instead of surprise. Yes, your social circle may get smaller, but the relationships that remain can become deeper and more precious. Yes, your body may become less forgiving, but you can learn to work with it more wisely. Yes, you may need help more often, but accepting it can free you to focus on what truly matters. Yes, the world may try to make you invisible, but you have the power to insist on being seen. And yes, you may have regrets, but you also have the wisdom that comes from a life fully lived. The choice is still yours. What strikes me most about people thriving in their 80s is that they've learned something crucial. They still get to choose. They choose how to respond to limitations. They choose which relationships to nurture. They choose how to spend their energy. They choose what kind of person to be in the face of challenges. Dorothy chose to build new friendships instead of mourning old ones. Frank chose to adapt his strength instead of lamenting its loss. Rose chose to accept help instead of struggling alone. Arthur chose to speak up instead of disappearing. Helen chose to find new purpose instead of dwelling on missed opportunities. The unexpected gifts. Here's something that might surprise you. Many people find their 80s to be among the most meaningful years of their lives. Not because everything is easy, but because everything is clear. The priorities that seemed confusing at 40 become obvious at 80. The relationships that matter stand out from the ones that don't. The activities that bring joy separate from the ones that simply fill time. When you know your time is limited, you stop wasting it on things that don't matter. When you've survived enough losses, you become deeply grateful for what remains. When you've made enough mistakes, you become more forgiving of others who are still making theirs. Your story continues. Your 80s aren't the epilogue to your life story. They're another chapter, and you're still the author. You get to decide whether this chapter is about decline or adaptation, about isolation or connection, about regret or acceptance, about invisibility or presence, about emptiness or meaning. The challenges we've talked about today are real. They happen to almost everyone who lives long enough, but they're not the whole story. The whole story includes your resilience, your wisdom, your capacity for growth, and your ability to find light even in difficult circumstances. A message of hope. To anyone listening who is facing these realities now, or who will face them in the future, you are stronger than you think you are. You have survived everything life has thrown at you so far, and that has given you tools you might not even realize you possess. The same spirit that carried you through earlier challenges is still there, ready to carry you through these ones. And to anyone who loves someone in their 80s, be patient with these struggles. Offer help without taking over. Listen to their stories even if you've heard them before. See them as they are, complete people with rich inner lives, not just as problems to be solved or responsibilities to be managed. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope these insights have given you a clearer picture of what life after 80 really looks like. Not the sanitized version from greeting cards, but the real version with its challenges and its unexpected gifts. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 5 realities resonated most with your experience? If you're in your 80s, what would you add to this list? If you're younger, what surprised you most about what we discussed today? Your perspectives help make this community richer for everyone. If this video helped you understand something new about aging, please share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. And if you want to join our ongoing conversations about the real experiences of getting older, subscribe to Golden Threads of Life and ring that notification bell. Remember, growing older isn't about giving up or giving in. It's about growing wiser, more selective, and more intentional about how you spend the precious time you have. Every stage of life has its challenges, but it also has its possibilities. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, keep weaving those golden threads.